All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about something that, let's be honest, we all crave: comfort. But what if I told you that your brain's obsession with comfort, well, what if it isn't relaxation at all? What if it's actually something called psychic flight, a clever escape from your own potential?
That sounds pretty extreme, right? But just think about it for a second. We chase comfort because it feels safe. It's like a warm blanket for our minds. But what we're about to unpack is how this drug, this so called safety, can become the very thing that keeps your life story stuck on page one.
So, what exactly is this psychic flight? You know, it's that subconscious choice we make to retreat into what's easy and familiar the moment we face a real challenge. It's choosing the couch over that tough conversation. It's the mindless scrolling instead of starting that project. It feels like safety for sure, but really, it's just an escape. Does your week ever feel, I don't know, like a rerun? You know, the same tasks, same distractions, same feeling that you're just kind of treading water? That is not an accident. That feeling of being stuck is actually a symptom. Your mind is basically medicating you with comfort to help you avoid the discomfort of making real progress.
So the big question is why? Why does our brain do this to us? Why would it actively get in the way of our own growth? Well, in this first section, we're going to decode that psychological script that's running in the background, the one that's keeping you hooked on stagnation. And it all starts with this really foundational idea from Sigmund Freud, the pleasure principle. See, at its most basic level, your brain is hardwired for just one thing: find pleasure and run away from pain. It's this automatic, super primitive drive that controls our most basic instincts. And the part of your personality that's driving this is what Freud called the id. The best way to think about the id is as a demanding toddler that lives in your head. It wants what it wants, and it wants it right now. The second things get tough, it starts screaming for the easy stuff. You know, the snacks, the social media, the Netflix binge. Why? Because it's trying to escape the burden of self-awareness. That is, the hard work of actually looking at yourself and where you're going. So what happens when you let the id run the show? You end up starring in what some psychologists call a stagnant water story. It's a life movie where the plot never ever changes. The main character never grows. It's a kind of movie you'd never pay to see, but so many of us are living it, day in and day out. Now, these ruts, this whole stagnant water story, they actually have a scientific name: cognitive scripts. They're basically mental shortcuts. The work, eat, comfort, sleep routine, that's a classic cognitive script. The real danger here is that your brain gets used to it. It's a process called habituation. You literally become numb to your own lack of progress because the stagnant water just starts to feel normal. Okay, so that's the problem. And it's a pretty powerful automatic system we're up against. But here's the pivot. This is where things change. We're about to talk about the one tool that can actually break you out of that cage. And believe it or not, that tool is stress itself.
This really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? If our brains are literally programmed to seek comfort, how in the world do we break that programming and rewrite our own story? How do we stop this terrible movie and start a new one?
Well, the answer is all about making a conscious shift. It's about moving from that pleasure principle to what Freud called the reality principle. This is where your ego, the more rational adult part of your mind, finally steps in and takes the wheel. Your ego gets it. It understands that some discomfort right now is totally necessary for growth down the road. It's all about trading that immediate fix for a future success. And check this out. This shows you just how powerful that mental shift is. Research actually shows that the way you think about stress physically changes your body's reaction to it. If you see a difficult task as a threat, your body floods with the stress hormone cortisol. But if you just reframe it as a challenge that you can handle, your physical stress response is way, way lower. It's incredible. So here's the main takeaway, the thing you really need to get. That feeling of anxiety you get when you're facing something new, that is not a stop sign. It's a signal. It's your educated ego tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, pay attention. Here's a chance to learn something new, to get stronger. Stress isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. Okay, so you've decided to do it. You're ready to embrace the challenge, step out of that comfort zone. But there's one more obstacle you're going to face. It's a very specific kind of anxiety, and it's the thing that sends most people running right back to their old, comfortable script. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard had a name for it: the dizziness of freedom. And it's not the fear of something bad happening.
It's that deep, overwhelming feeling of angst that hits you when you truly, fully realize that you, and only you, are in charge of your choices. This is the real weight of freedom. I mean, when you understand that your future isn't set in stone, that it literally hangs on every single choice you make, that can be terrifying. And that feeling, that dizziness, is what makes the cage of comfort look so good again. But you have to remember, a cage is still a cage.
And that brings us to the most important part of this whole explainer. We've talked about the what and the why, so now let's get to the how. This is the practical, step-by-step technique you can actually use to break that addiction to comfort for good. The technique is called verbal fabrication, and it's really all about learning to see your actions clearly. The trick is to stop judging yourself as good or bad. Instead, you start looking at your actions with the cool, detached precision of a craftsman examining their work. You're just evaluating the quality of the execution. Here's how it works, in 4 pretty simple steps. First, you just notice the impulse, that urge to scroll or snack or put things off. Second, and this is the most important part, you pause. You just create a little bit of space between the urge and the action. Third, you ask yourself one very powerful question. And fourth, depending on the answer, you either move forward or you drop the action. Just like that, instantly. And this right here, this is the question. When that urge for that easy, unskillful comfort pops up, you just ask yourself, if I were to do this and only this for a full 24 hours, what kind of behavior would that create? What kind of person would I become? It's such a simple mental trick, but it completely breaks the spell of instant gratification and forces you to look at the long-term consequences. Now, this isn't just some mind game, it's real science. Every single time you do this mental check and choose a better action, you are literally physically rewiring your brain. That's neuroplasticity in action. You're weakening the old pathways that lead to comfort and building brand new ones that lead to growth. You're actually changing your brain's hardware. I want you to think of yourself as a programmer for your own mind. With every conscious choice you make, every time you pause and ask that question, you are actively deleting that old, buggy sabotage script, and you're writing clean, new code for optimal performance. You are taking back control of your own operating system. So, I'll leave you with this final question to think about. Comfort feels like a soft pillow, but most of the time it's actually a cage. And the choice, in the end, is always yours. Every single moment gives you a new decision. Are you going to be a guardian of your limitations, retreating back into the safety of that cage? Or are you going to be a guardian of your potential and step out into the dizziness of freedom?